Yeah, Jason, I was really excited to catch up with my good friend Orest. He runs a podcast called The Old Guy Talks to Me, and he's going to join me right now. Coming in here from Las Vegas. Orest, welcome to the Two Bros Show. My partner Jason might be joining us here in a moment, but if not, welcome to our show, man.
All right. Well, thank you. Thanks, Rob. Thanks for having me
Again,
on.
we posed to be a comedy podcast, but we really do have an effort to help people and help people kind of just improve themselves. So one thing that really struck me about your introduction is you introduce yourself as being able to help men live kick-ass lives. And that just caught my attention because my life, you would think it's as kick-ass as it could possibly be. There is room for improvement. Talk about your program. And first of all, welcome to our show, man.
Thank you. Thank you. It comes from the belief that no matter where you are, you can be a better version of yourself. Mm-hmm. So if you're crappy, well, it's easy to get to good. If you're good, then it takes work to get to great. And if you're good and if you don't pay attention, if you kind of think you're on autopilot, then you end up going to crappy.
Well, that's a good point because guys get to be 40.
I think it's status quo.
They get to be 40 and they go on autopilot. They kind of give up. So, I mean, we'll talk about that in depth. I didn't want to interrupt you, but that's such a great point. You get to 40 just like autopilot and give up or whatever. So, and you're saying, no, don't do that. That's when your life should begin.
Well, this is the thing. And I hear this from young pukes all the time. In their 40s, they talk about like 60 and 65 is the end of the world. And it's not. I'm 70. I'm 70, very active. We talked a little bit before we got on camera. I have a podcast, and then I have a men's coaching program. And so I'm really busy. I'm very active. And I suspect I'm going to live at least probably another 30 to 50 years. So even at 70, I still got a good portion of my life ahead of me.
Well, do you think it takes a little bit of you have to have a lot of piss and vinegar to last 80, 90 years anymore? Because, boy, I'll tell you what, the world it just changes every year. Things get weirder and crazier. And, first of all, how do you deal with that? Just the changes you've seen in your lifetime.
I'm in for the fight. I mean, that's it. I do not, in any stretch of imagination, take a victim mentality. Now, there are days I have my bad days. It's like, I'm not going to tell you that. It's always full on. But in general, I believe that I am in control of my life, and that's where a lot of people get off. And that's actually a big part of my program is that men give up and they realize they let themselves get into a victim mentality. And that can be in their business, it can be in their health, and quite frequently it's in their relationships.
Oh, sure.
And a problem in one area permeates into other areas.
Exactly. And, for instance, again, Jason, my partner, I give him so much trouble because he basically looks like he emerged from a homeless camp, but he just is a man of the earth, he just beard scraggly, but he is a guy that feels like he can't get a break in life. And that's why I want him to really listen to the show. But, how do you when you just live a life of being beaten down and just not really having any sort of status in life, how do you turn that around in your 40s? Because, man, I know my man Jason can do it.
And I think, first of all, it's mindset. I mean, it all starts, well, okay, how do you turn that around? First of all, the most important relationship you have in your life is the relationship with yourself. If you don't respect yourself, if you don't love yourself, nothing else is going to work. Mm-hmm. Nothing else is going to work. So that's important. The other, and that's determined by the questions you ask yourself. And I went to a Tony Robbins thing, this is a long time ago, 25 ago. He says, the quality of your life is determined by the questions you ask. And I thoroughly believe that's very true because you question of yourself quietly, and we all ask questions in our mind all the time. Okay, well, why didn't that work? And you'll get 5 reasons. And by the way, most of the time, those reasons are irrelevant because that's the wrong question to ask. The question is, how do I get this to work? That's the one you want answered. It doesn't, so I use this example quite often because it's just really understand. So you're driving along and there's a tree in the middle of the road that's blocking your passage. Now, you can sit there and analyze, well, this tree fell down. It got knocked down by the wind. It was diseased, knocked down. Somebody chopped it down. But all of those things are totally irrelevant to the fact of how do you get your car or your vehicle around this tree so you can continue with your journey. And that's what I mean by proper questioning. You have to have proper questions for yourself. Is very key.
That's a great point because, I think the question a lot of guys is why me? Why did my life turn out? It all becomes why instead of like, well, how can I change it? How can I turn this around? Okay, this isn't a death sentence. It's, and that's what we really preach. It's like, hey, if you have problems in your life, you know what? Everybody has problems in their life, but at some point you got to rally past it.
Well, yeah, I have problems in my life. I had a major medical setback at the beginning of this year. I had what's called an ostomy. It's where they separate your intestine from your colon, and they put a hole in your stomach, and you shit out through your stomach, and you can't control when you shit because there's no sphincter. It's and there's a bag. And for the first 3 weeks or so, we couldn't get the bag to stay out properly. We went to all sorts of wound healing places. And so my morning consisted of wake up in the morning and shitting on myself for about 2 or 3 hours, literally shitting on myself. And my wife, who's a saint, would clean it up. And it was hard. I finally got, several months later, I got put back together again. But, shit happens, literally.
Yeah.
And so it's not a fact of, is it going to happen? First of all, expect it to happen from time to time. And the question is, how do you deal it? And, we talked about power questions, the mentality, and also to have a clear idea about what you want. Most people cannot clearly articulate what they want in a measurable way. Okay. So, people go like, men, the things that couples argue about the most are sex and money. Number 2. Okay. So a guy saying like, well, I want more sex. Well, what does that mean? Certainly measurable, but what does that actually mean?
I mean, exactly. They mean they want more attention. They want more intimacy. It can mean a lot of different things.
Right. But also, is it like once a day, once a week, once a month? Yeah. Okay. Let's get down real specific on this.
Sure.
All right. And I think you're absolutely correct. I think men, that's a big thing that I coach is men make the mistake that they say like, oh, I want more sex, and they say that to their significant other. Well, no, dude. First of all, saying that means, that's kind of in many ways says like, let me borrow your vagina for a few minutes.
Yeah.
And I'll use it and I'll give it back to you. It'll be a little used, but you can have it back.
Yeah, exactly. It doesn't go over well. Yeah.
No. And not only that, but you're begging. I mean, you're turning in your man card because you're begging. And even if so what men really want and what women want too is spiritual, emotional, and physical intimacy. That's what people want. So that's one of the big things. So in that realm, that's what you have to work on. But again, there depends on where you start. If you're having sex once a year, it's a different place than starting and having sex maybe once a week or once a couple of times a month or whatever. And also the quality of that relationship is very key.
Sure.
And
I'm sorry, go ahead.
Go ahead.
Well, it says, reminds me of a great Rodney Dangerfield line. He said, me and my wife, only smoke after sex. And I'm up to, a pack a day or she's up to 3 packs a day or something. I'm up to a pack a week or something like that. It was kind of funny or something like that.
Sure.
But my point, another issue that we run into a lot, and just guys hanging out, and like I said, we're kind of guys who hang out at a bar, sort of thing, and guys that get to hit that 40 point, they got kids, maybe 9, 10, or whatever. Their wives kind of maybe gain pounds. They just kind of let themselves go. They don't care anymore. They don't care about relationships. They don't care about even cleaning themselves up. They wear shitty clothes. They look like hell. They get fat. They get, they just start building into that male stereotype, fat beer belly guy. Why is it dangerous? It's kind of hurts all of us when that happens.
Well, I think a lot of it also, and I don't know if you're aware of, there's a huge decline of testosterone in men.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, there's several studies. There's generational declines. A man in his 60s today has about 15 to 20% less testosterone than a man in the 60s 20 years ago. Okay, so that's a huge mood situation. And plus, when you're in low testosterone, it's easy to put on the fat. It's easy to lose muscle mass, lose bone density. You actually lose a lot of drive, ambition, basically decisiveness. And so those things happen. I can speak from personal experience in this space because I've been on testosterone optimization for 25 years.
Okay.
And I think that's probably a lot of reason why I'm also I don't think like I'm 70. I think like I'm in my 40s. In a very vigorous, healthy 40s. So
Sure.
I still got things. I still got things I want to do in my life. But there's several there's several podcasts on my podcast. Old Guy Talks to Me, where I've interviewed various experts in the space of testosterone. And the other challenge is that there's all sorts of false stuff about it's not safe. You're going to get prostate cancer. Blah blah blah. And by the way, I'm not a doctor, but consult with the appropriate physician, which probably is not your primary care doctor, because they also are subjected to this old belief about testosterone optimization. So you have to find what they call a functional medicine doctor that's really good at it. There's a lot of these clinics now that are out there. Those are kind of have their pluses and minuses for a number of different reasons. But for men, testosterone is what makes you man. I mean, so having low is a significant factor and a problem for people.
Well, again, I think guys get in this point of, let's say they want to make a change and they don't even really know where to start. They start saying, okay, well, I want to start having more sex with my spouse, so I need to start taking her out once a week. I mean, and they think there's a special formula. And guys are terrible at reading situations. So do you feel like as you get older, you're better at reading those situations and that maybe people just need to slow the fuck down?
Yeah. Well, I think slowing down, and as I said, it depends on where you're starting. That's going to be a big factor. I think that a lot of times also people don't know what someone else wants. And you hear this guy, oh, I do everything for her. Well, did you ever ask her if she wanted what you're doing?
Yeah.
Did you ever have a conversation when you weren't drunk and pissed off and you're yelling at each other? Have you ever sat down and said tell me, and maybe you can't give me this answer right away, but maybe we can come back to this conversation. Tell me what you want. What you want out of your life, out of our relationship. What is it that you actually want? And so these are the kind of things that will, and it's a process, like I said, depending on where you are, but men can rescue their situation, whether it be, relationships, fitness, or finances. And one of the things I also say quite often in my coaching program is, no matter how bad things are, they can get worse.
It's true. It's true.
they probably, and with attention, they will get worse.
Sure. And you think about in the 60s and 70s, there weren't there weren't these products available. There wasn't these sort of therapies. It just was in a very awkward situation. And I think some people still hold on to those awkward conversations. The wife thinks it's her, the husband thinks it's her. And, it's a rub area. You're right, for in marriages.
Yeah. And also the other thing is that one, talk about ED, which is a big factor in some relationships. And there's all sorts of treatments now that are available. Again, I talk about this on my podcast quite often, that are out there and that are available to men. And the other thing that many don't realize is quite often is that a woman, as she becomes older, sometimes sex becomes painful. And again, there's treatments out there for that. And I've interviewed women. I had a doctor, gynecologist, Anna Quebeca, and one of our podcasts is called Vaginal Deterioration, Vaginal Rejuvenation. And we talk about that kind of stuff. So I go places where people don't often want to go.
I would say that's pretty deep, so to speak. So, well, let's talk about your podcast. Again, you said you've been doing the podcast how long? And you're everywhere. You're on Apple. You're on.
Yeah, we're 150 episodes. We're into 150 episodes, one episode a week.
Wow.
And
what topics you kind of cover? I mean, what?
I don't do a lot of politics and I don't do a lot of business. But everything else is fair game. I spend a lot of time in relationships, sex, anti-aging medicine. I talk to cutting edge experts in from stem cells to peptides to all sorts of other things, porn addiction, suicide, cigars and scotch, all sorts of stuff. So it's a lifestyle podcast,
Awesome.
And we spend a lot of time. Sometimes we get into stuff. We get into transgender athletes, and we talk. I had a Scott Howell was a really, really smart scientist, and we talk about the science of that.
Sure.
And so we have. So it's a whole range of stuff, and I've had sometimes I'll get some professional athletes on. I've had I don't know if you've watched UFC, but I had Forrest Griffin.
Oh yeah,
sure.
Cool.
Yeah. Season 1 winner and light heavyweight champion in the UFC.
Awesome.
World champion. Had Olympic gold medalists, famous pilots, things like that. We cover the gamut of stuff.
And
just got to be interesting.
Sure, exactly. Well, I would say the vaginal deterioration definitely got my attention, but it's probably too scientific. Like for our crowd, it might be a little scientific, but hey,
no, it's not. It's not at all. No. Don't go there. Don't go there.
Well, I'll tell you what. I'll put some of these links in our comments. So people can hit it up.
Yeah, because I often will back. Now I have some very smart guests.
Oh yeah.
Actually, I don't know what polymaths are.
I've seen some of your things. I was like, whoa, they said there'd be no math.
But I when they get too technical, and I just go like, okay, what does that mean? I have no idea what you just said.
Sure.
And so we're interested in actionable information. So I'll have them backpedal and explain something. Especially the guy, the androgen expert. He's a lot of times I'll just go, okay, Scott, I don't have a fucking clue about what you just said.
Exactly. We get that. I said about Jason, our co-host, and he's speaking English, the King's English, so to speak, the Midwest King's English. So anyway, but the thing that I really appreciate you taking time and being with us, because again, we're expanding our podcast. We're trying to grow. One thing that caught my ear, and something that we actually talk about every show, and something that's one of our pillars, is suicide and suicide awareness, because we definitely want to get that message out to people. We've had too many people. As someone who kind of speaks about that, we always like to let people know about the resources that are out there, and not just the phone calls, but like if you're having an issue and you make that phone call, what happens? Like we want to take some of the fear out of that. How do you talk to your guest about suicide and those sort of issues? It's such a tough topic, because once it's touched your life, it can never untouch you. You know what I mean?
Yeah. I had a guest on. We just had one episode on suicide, and he was actually a suicide comedian, and he's suicidal, or he was.
Wow.
But he makes he does a comedy routine about that. And it's
Well,
kind
that's
of
pretty.
it's a
That's pretty walking the tightrope, I would think, huh?
yeah, and you can only to a certain extent you can only do that if that's what you are.
Yeah.
Uh, but yeah, it's a pretty close topic to me because one of my actually November 1st is the 10-year anniversary of one of my very close friends who hadn't committed suicide,
Mm. Yeah.
and it came out of nowhere. We were
Yeah.
all just stunned when it happened.
Mhm.
So I think there's counseling that really needs to go into it, and the it's a sad thing because you don't really people who commit suicide don't really realize the ramifications of what happens to the people that they leave
Exactly.
behind.
Yeah.
He was my friend was very smart and very clever, but there were some things that he didn't foresee, and the things that he built up over a decade just slowly came apart. And
Mm.
and then it was a very sad thing. Like I said, no one could really figure out that, and even to this day, we don't really understand exactly why he committed suicide.
Exactly. And again, you're hard pressed to find anyone who has not been touched in one way by this sort of thing. So we bring it up. Hard to do on a comedy podcast about suicide. You're right, because you can't really make jokes about it. But we do get serious about that. And you did mention that, and I definitely want to mention. So let people know where can we find your podcast and what's coming up on the next couple of shows.
You can find me at my podcast is called oldguytalkstome.com.
We'll put it in the comments,
And
folks.
okay, and then you can what's coming up as far as new shows. I got um, a divorce lawyer, and we're talking about getting married again, older,
Hmm.
and some of the things that she encounters. Uh,
I'm on number
I have
three. If you need a guess, I'm on number three.
so we can circle back to that in just a second here, Rob. Um, I have a former Vietnam medevac helicopter pilot, and talks about his experience in Vietnam. He just put out a book, Dust Off. I have a who's coming up? Who's coming up? I've got some people in relationships, but I think also just kind of if you peruse. Isn't that a great word?
Yeah,
Peruse.
Peru.
It sounds exactly like what you're doing. You peruse
Mhm.
the titles of the various podcasts. I think you'll find a lot of stuff you'll find in there
Mhm.
that's interesting.
Yeah.
And the other place is that my coaching program is called the Standard Academy, and so that's that. And you can um, get my free digital magazine if you go to the standard.academy/magazine. And there's several light articles by experts, uh, including one of the articles is one secret place to touch a woman. Okay, and it's not her clitoris because that's not a secret place.
Where's that? We've never heard of that.
So Rob, I will ask you, since you said you were on number
Sure.
3.
Yes.
Are you on number 3, or that's going to be the next one?
No, I've been married to number 3 for 7 years now, so we're good.
Okay, so you're okay. So
Yeah.
let me ask you: did you do anything different between number 2 and number 3, as far as yourself?
Yes, I did. Yes, I think I just had a little bit more confidence and a little bit more, you know, I wasn't a guy, I felt like I was somewhat beaten down in my relationships. I was really dominated. So I made it a point never to be dominated again. And I
Mhm.
just really stood up for myself. And I'll tell you, I really saw that like gals really responded to that. They were like, wow, here's a guy with confidence, good. And it didn't occur to me how many men have this cloak of being big pussies. And like a guy
Well,
that stands up as a real man, like really stands out to women. Like, oh wow, it's
yeah,
interesting.
it's interesting because most of the time when people get on a cycle of divorce and marriage, marriage and divorce,
Mhm.
marriage, divorce, marriage, divorce, they usually just end up marrying essentially the same person with a different first name.
Hmm. Well, yeah, I would say my wife and I are we're the same in a lot of ways, but we're different in a lot of ways. But
Well, no.
we have,
They
yeah,
didn't. They marry another woman. So wife number 1 is very similar to wife number 2.
Oh, I
because
got you.
they just have they just have a different first name, but they're
Yeah.
essentially because unless you work on yourself, you end up attracting the same person over and over
Sure,
and
sure.
over.
And again, I just want to say in my defense, because again, there was a time in America, if you were married more than once, people really thought you were a freaking idiot, you know? And I got married when I was 18 years old, right out of high school. Yeah, I had a child. And I wanted to
Uh-huh.
raise my child. So I went in the military, went in the army, did great in the army and all that stuff. But God, the army just didn't want to be married anymore. So I actually went through a 10-year period of being bachelor. I loved it. It was the best time of my life, but I just couldn't afford to be a bachelor. It's a pretty expensive lifestyle. So now I can't afford to be a married man. It's a different kind of expense. Wife and kids. Wife and kids, I mean, those are that expense.
Yeah, sure. Well,
So
how many kids you have?
in all, I have a total of 5.
Mhm.
Two older ones, a 14-year-old, and then two younger guys. So it was kind of funny. I grew up in a house where I had older brothers and sisters. So there were always fucking kids in my goddamn house all the goddamn time. So I thought, I'm never gonna have kids. And boom, once I got my girlfriend got pregnant at 18, and the kids have been part of my life ever since. So
Sure.
and even when I thought I was done with having kids, I had more kids. So you know what? I call myself super seaman. Hey, if anyone's looking to sell, everybody's looking. I'll sell my stuff on the side. But haven't gotten anybody to buy that. So no. But anyway, I have fun with it. But again, I've learned a lot. You learn a lot.
Sure,
Experience
absolutely.
is a great teacher, man. It really is. So, listen, I really appreciate your time. Really appreciate you being with us. Like I said, the show will be out this weekend, and hopefully everyone will join us. And I'll put all the links in the comments, so people can reach out to you. And certainly, we wish you well, and want to thank you for coming on with us.
All right. Well, thanks for having me on, Rob.
Thanks so much. Again, that's Orest. He's on the Old Guy Talks to Me podcast. Find it on Apple Podcasts. Find it everywhere, and we'll have the information in our description here. Thanks again, man. Hopefully, we'll be kicking ass and seeing you at 90.
There we go.
Nice. Take care, sir.
All right. Thank you. Thanks for having me on.
Okay, folks, that's going to be it. Jason, we're going to head back to the studio, man. What a great opportunity to get a little self-help from our man Orest. And we're going to be right back to you guys right after this message. Two Bros Show. Bye.